elegant and beautiful crop, usually the circle is not held in the crop for very long because it tends to grow out more rapidly than, for example, wheat, which will hold a pattern often for weeks. But barley will sometimes lose the imprint of the crop circle in some days. On this occasion, there was a very, very beautiful spiral form, but it wasn't an ordinary spiral, like, for example, a clock spring, which from the center wound out consistently until the end. This was a spiral which went through an arc of curvature, stepped outwards, round in an arc, stepped outwards. So it was a jagged spiral or a stepped spiral. And what was very intriguing about this formation, when viewed from above, from the hillside or from an aeroplane, it was absolutely beautiful. It was a very, very elegant formation. But there was something very deliberate and willful about the position of the step outwards, the jags, the ratchets on this enlarging coil. And it was very difficult to understand what was going on there. But there was definitely a communication contained within the geometry. Now, with some research, we found that, and it's very difficult to explain without drawings, but we found that it was possible by looking at the various geometries involved in this elegant formation that it embodied very accurately the number pi, which is the constant which is used for the calculation of circles and spheres and cones and cylinders, indeed every conceivable circular form. I mean, we use for ordinary calculations 22/7, which is an approximation of pi, but it is not as accurate as a real decimal number. And in fact, we found that the formation encoded pi to 10 decimal points. Well, this was probably the nearest we've ever got to a message. It's my view that most of crop circles are very articulate, but they don't give us messages, they give us communications. But this was so specific, so precise, and so undeniable that it was moving, I think it was moving the crop circle phenomenon up to another level.
So basically, these crop circles are communications through mathematics and symbology, correct?
Yes.
And in a sense, I guess after doing this for 20 years, investigating this and researching this, what do you think the message was of the crop circle you're talking about?
Well, I've been looking, we've referred already to the squaring of the circle. And it's my view after 20 years that this is one of many, many ideas which are being pushed at us. But it's the idea which I've hooked onto and which I've been promoting for a long time. I believe the crop circles are telling us that there are transformations about to occur which will make the earth more spiritual. That we are shifting our dimension, our consciousness, our density, our vibration towards a greater spirituality. Now, clearly, I think this is a very good idea, and clearly, I think we need that. But I think one of the ways they communicate it is by the reiteration of the idea of squaring the circle.
That's fascinating. Fascinating.
To me, would be far more accurate, a way of saying it, would be circling the square. Squaring the circle would imply we make heaven, the circle, squarer or more earthly, which seems to me to be stupid. What we really want to do is to circle the square, make earth more heavenly. Now, if that is a recurrent and increasingly emphasized message, then the placing of pi in a field with such precision and beauty and elegance seems to reinforce it, as pi is a necessary constant for the calculation of the relationship between squareness and circularity. Now, having said all this, I've got to say that for me it's only a hypothesis. I don't know what the hell's going on. I've been doing it for 20 years. I can only speak conjecturally. I do not know, against which, after 20 years, I think this is quite an interesting conjecture, and I'm going to stick with it for a while.
In your book, Crop Circles, The Bones of God, how is it the bones of God, or what made you think of that?
Well, I mean, it's there in the beginning that this 17th century Italian geometer, Alessandro Fanucci, said geometry could be considered the ossatura di Dio, which means literally the bone work. Ossatura means a sort of bone frame, not a skeleton. But I've shortened it to bones of God. It seemed to me to be a very poetic idea that geometry was the bones of God. And certainly the crop circles are very much to do with geometry. And so I borrowed and retranslated his statement for my title.
I liked it very, very much.
Good. I'm glad you do.
I really, really do. I really kind of just hit. It leaves the person wanting to read and to find out.
Yes.
Sacred geometry is what, really? How would you define sacred geometry for us?
Geometry is a phrase which is promiscuously thrown about, disgracefully used in the New Age by people who do not understand the difference between geometry and sacred geometry. And it pains me the way the phrase sacred geometry is abused. What we have to start with is an acceptance of the fact that we live in a world which is governed by geometry. Motor cars could not exist without geometry. Buildings could not exist without geometry. Furniture could not exist without geometry. Nothing which is manufactured could exist without geometry. But